What's going on, guys? It is July 7th, and we're here to talk about rookie running backs and potential breakout candidates for the running back position. Before I introduce the guys, I just want to thank our sponsors. Thank you all for listening. Please subscribe, give us a review, and hit that like button. It really supports the show. And our first sponsor is WynnBET. With WynnBET, you can bet $50 and get 200 in free bets. Bet big, win bigger with WynnBET. Download the WynnBET app now or visit wynnbet.com and start winning today. We also want to shout out our sponsors at Sleeper. We're brought to you by Sleeper. You already play fantasy on Sleeper, but now you can win cold hard cash with their over-under game. Just head to sleeper.com/SGP on your phone to join the SGPN group, and Sleeper will automatically match your first deposit up to $100. That's sleeper.com/SGP. And then download the SGPN app and make sure you check our relaunch merch store where you can get all your favorite SGPN gear. Just go to store.sportsgamblingpodcast.com. And again, this is the Sports Gambling Podcast Network's fantasy podcast. All right, so let's introduce the guys. First off, Marcus, professional nerd. Is that what it said on Twitter?
that is sort of my my whole deal, right? I mean, I do fantasy football for a living, so I guess that sort of qualifies, right?
Yeah, well, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on. One of the nicest and most humble guys on here, and I really appreciate it, Marcus. Ralph, how are we doing, sir?
Good. Happy to be back on. Happy to be back on with everybody. Excited for this. Running backs, I know in the fantasy world, it's a hit or miss. People either love them, hate them, don't care for them. I love my running backs. So I'm excited to talk about some of these guys today.
Where can we find you? Where can we find your work?
FF Face-Off. I'm a writer there for FF Face-Off. I contribute a lot there, rankings, and then during the season, you can catch me on Lobo's FF Den. More than happy to talk fantasy football with you. More than happy to talk about football. Anything you'd like, I'm on there.
Awesome. Jeremy, congrats on the new gig over at FTN. How are we doing, sir?
I'm doing swell. Thanks for the congrats. I appreciate it. But yeah, I'm doing well. I'm doing swell in Buffalo, just living. It's not 100 degrees as Ralph had mentioned to us, but it's warm. It's warm, so it's a plus.
100 today. That's a good thing. It's not 100 today in nice and sunny Chandler, Arizona. So we're living today.
Yeah, if it hits 100 here, we just shut down. That's too warm for us. It doesn't work like that.
Over or under 100 tables were broken on July 4th in Buffalo.
Probably less. We just blow fireworks up.
We
don't jump through tables then. It's not Bill season yet.
Okay. And Justin, how we doing, sir?
Good, my friend. Very excited for this show. So I appreciate the invite. Marcus, I got to say, professionals like you are why we do this stuff, man. So I appreciate you jumping in with us and kind of chopping it up.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys inviting me. Looking forward to the chat.
All right, so let's get to the main event. We're going to talk about some running backs that could potentially break out. Jonathan Taylor will obviously help you win your league, but it's getting guys like Cooper Kupp and Jamar Chase in the 6th round that really help you win the league. So we're going to help you, with some breakout candidates that we think could be some good grabs this year. Marcus, you want to start us off with two guys?
Sure. Well, I'll start with J.K. Dobbins, which I felt a whole lot better about until this morning, and I haven't listened to it yet. I know that Matthew Betts, the fantasy PT, was on a pod, and I haven't gotten to it, but I guess the hint I got was that he's suggesting that maybe the recovery from injury is going to slow him down. But I'm gonna choose to put my blinders on at this moment and ignore anything that might have been said. I know Matthew's really smart and does a lot of good work, so I'm not criticizing him at all. I'm going back on my priors right now. But, this time last year, we all thought J.K. Dobbins was set for a huge breakout role in Baltimore. Unfortunately, suffers the injury during a preseason game, and we don't see him the entire year. I know he's going to have to split time, right? They expect Gus Edwards is going to be back and healthy again. We know Lamar Jackson is going to run the football as well. But this is still going to be an offense that's very effective and very efficient running the football. There's still I think, fairly short on pass catchers, right? I mean, Mark Andrews is going to be there, and he's going to get a ton of targets. Rashad Bateman now presumably slides into that role that was vacated by Marquise Brown. But this is a team that we know is going to run the football. And they were pretty effective running the football last year, despite a slew of injuries. Now, in theory, they have their guys back. So I think Dobbins obviously is going to take the lead. I think he gets a lot of work. My hope is, fingers crossed, that they actually throw him the football occasionally too, because I know that's a thing we hear from the Ravens every year, that, we're going to throw the ball more. We're going to get involved more in the passing game. I'll sort of believe that when I see it, but I do hope that they throw the ball to Dobbins a little bit, and I think that's going to boost his value. The other guy that I really like is Travis Etienne, and I feel like I'm part of a crowd here. Like, I don't, like, I want to say I'm driving that bus, but I feel like there's a lot of people, elbowing for the driver's seat on that bus right now. But I mean, this was a guy that last year I really wanted to see the Jaguars do something kind of what the Browns were able to do with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see that because Etienne, like Dobbins, got hurt. We didn't see him all last year. Now he's back and he's healthy. I know that the reports out of Jacksonville are very positive. They're very excited about what they've seen from him and what he can do. Throw in the fact that James Robinson, I love the guy, but obviously with the injury late in the season, we don't know exactly when we're going to see Robinson, and we don't know exactly what he's going to be when he's back on the field again. So that really points to Etienne getting a ton of work, especially early in the season. We know he can catch the football. We know that's something he can do. We saw that in college. Also, throw in the fact that he's back with his old college teammate and Trevor Lawrence again. I know it doesn't always work like Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase did in Cincinnati, but maybe we can hope that it works a little bit like Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase in Cincinnati. So there you go. J.K. Dobbins, Travis Etienne. Essentially, I was going to say a pair of rookies. No, but Dobbins had his rookie season. This will be essentially Etienne's rookie season. So a couple of young guys, I think, are ready to take the leap this year.
Now, I love both those calls. Anybody have any disputes with any of that? I think he nailed it.
No,
I think so.
I'm in on J.K. Dobbins too. I agree with what Marcus said. I know I'm avoiding the injury plague that I've seen all over Twitter, that everybody says that the ACL is the end all for 1 year after. There's usually a depreciation in efficiency, but I mean, we're talking about a guy that 6 yards a carry, 6.7 per reception when he got the ball, in an offense that's just built to run the ball. I think both him and Edwards coming off the ACLs, I'm trusting that he's going to recover better, just because of maybe a little bit more pure talent. But I'm really in on Dobbins still this year. I think that he's still a good thing, and I'm all over Etienne too. I like that too.
Yeah, the Dobbins injury happened so early, and it was in the it was in training camp versus happening at the end of the year, something like that, like the James Robinson injury. And I like the additions to the offensive line with him grabbing Tyler Linderbaum, things like that. I love the Dobbins call, and I'm all in on Dobbins this year.
Yeah, I was going to say the only worry that I have with Dobbins, and it's really just the beginning of the year, it's not really the end of the season, is he did have, I think, LCL damage when he had that ACL injury, so it was a multi-ligament injury. That's maybe why we're hearing some of that noise, but I'd say block it at this point.
I mean, it's been almost a full calendar year at this point, too, since he got hurt. So he's had plenty of time to rehab now.
Absolutely. All right, Justin, hit us with two.
Yeah, so the guy that I think can be a breakout this year is Devin Singletary. He ended the season last year, a 4-game stretch, averaging 19 carries a game, 2.5 targets. Obviously, 2.5 targets isn't a whole lot, but that offense is going to score. I think I'm hearing a lot of things out of camp, and I'm hoping Jeremy will confirm that because he's my guy there in Buffalo. But I think Devin Singletary can take over that backfield. They brought in James Cook, but I think he's going to be more of a pass-catching option for them in the beginning. So in between the 20s, getting the carries and getting the goal line touches for an offense that's going to score. Plus, we've started to see them back off of Josh Allen's carries a little bit because they spent $200 and something million on this guy. So why are you going to run your $200 million investment into a wall when you've got someone like Devin Singletary, who's, I don't want to use the term, but a little bit expendable as a running back. So I'd rather him take that hit than Josh Allen. No. And the other guy I wanted to talk about a little bit, and I talked about him yesterday. I didn't put him on the list, but I'm starting to think that this could be a breakout year for Miles Sanders. The only reason I'm bringing up Miles Sanders, and I know I'm going to get a lot on this thing, he's got to put up or shut up if he wants a second contract. This is year 3 for him. I think last year his efficiency metrics came out pretty good. His PFF grade isn't great as a running back, but his efficiency metrics are pretty solid. That's a top 10 offensive line in Philadelphia. At some point, positive TD regression. I'm still on that train that he's going to get positive TD regression. I mean, the guy had like 80 carries last year with no touchdowns. It's just amazing sometimes, or over 100 carries with no touchdowns. So it's nuts. And I'm thinking if he pops in 5-6 touchdowns this year, he's a top 24 player, and that's kind of a breakout for him because I think that offense is going to be pretty good, and none of the defenses are really that scary in that conference other than maybe Washington, which we saw what they did last year.
No, I mean, Miles Sanders did make the comment, do not draft me. I'm not sure if you saw that, Marcus. He didn't seem very thrilled about the conversation about fantasy football. That was the number one rushing offense in the league last year. They got better with A.J. Brown. They got a great offensive line. What are your thoughts, Marcus?
Well, it's funny. He picked two guys that I really like, and I lean back on I feel like their teams don't like them as much as we all do. Like with Devin Singletary, I was glad to see the way he finished the season, where they really I think they decided that they were sort of over Zach Moss, and we started to see a lot more Devin Singletary, which was great. I used to always joke that for all the good things he did, it felt like he needed 3 forms of ID to get into the end zone, right? Like he would do all these things and they get near the goal line and then it's like Josh Allen or maybe Zach Moss would take it or whatever. And like, it's like he did all this work and he couldn't score. In fact, I think it was 2 years ago. Like they had to use a trick play to like get him in the end zone. I think it was like John Brown threw him a pass or something. I'm like, this is the only way you can score if you guys run a trick play. But I hope that what we saw at the end of last year carries over to next year because I do think he's a talented guy. And I feel the same way about Miles Sanders, but it just seems like everything the Eagles have done the last few years have been sort of trying to tell us that they don't love Miles Sanders the same way we do, that they keep bringing in other guys. They keep, rotating him in and out. I think he's super talented. I would love to see him break out. I just want to know that, that we're not the only ones sending him, fantasy love letters, that, it's the coaching staff in Philadelphia that looks at him and says, hey man, we love you too. And we want to see you prosper. I'm sure I'll probably draft him at some point. And, if I get the right ADP on him. But I just feel like the Eagles don't share our love and our hopes for Miles Sanders.
Well, and honestly, you touched on it. Just to add a little piece to it, his ADP is plummeting, and it's going to be low. He's one of those guys you can get at the back end of the RB dead zone, and so that's not really part of the breakout conversation. But I mean, if you're getting a guy like that, he's going to get 13 to 16 carries a game. That's pretty standard. And if he gets some injury luck this year and plays a full slate of games, I mean, he's got a chance.
Absolutely. And that's why the ADP is where it's at. And so, Ralph, who do you got?
Ooh, okay. Those are all good ones. I want to hop on the Singletary train. I do. I really, really do, Justin. So I'm hoping he does. My first one is Elijah Mitchell. I know there's a lot of uncertainty around Shanahan as the coach and whether, he's going to support a bell cow back. My brother actually sent me some pretty interesting facts when we were kind of talking about Elijah Mitchell a little bit. And the first one was he's actually supported some decent running backs in his day. I had to dig into some of the books and some of these pieces, but back in 2008, there was this guy named Slayton. You guys remember Steve Slayton? Mm-hmm. He was actually 270 carries, 1,200 yards, 9 touchdowns, 50 receptions, top 5 season. 2012, Alfred Morris. Rockin' season that he had, that 1,600-yard season in 2012. Shanahan was the offensive coordinator there, 13 touchdowns. 2013, another top 10 season for Morris. 2015, Devontae Freeman had that monster year where he put up over 1,000 yards and 70 receptions. That was Shanahan as well. So I think there's something to be said that if the guy can actually support that bell cow role, which I think Mitchell can if he stays healthy, that's going to be a huge guy. And I think very similar, Justin, to your point, his ADP was kind of slipping a little bit this offseason. I don't know exactly where he falls right now, but he's fallen. I want to say into the mid 20s right now. But I mean, overall, what we saw from him last year in his rookie season, he missed 6 games. He still ended with 47 yards away from 1,000-yard season. Was pretty freaking awesome in the ground game, efficient. 4th in the NFL in 10+ yard carries, only behind Jonathan Taylor, Nick Chubb, and Dalvin Cook. So all that being said, the 49ers have also, under Shanahan, had never rushed below 400 attempts. And last year they were one away from 500. So I think there's definitely some room there for him. Opportunity is going to be knocking for him. I'm excited about him. So that's my first guy. Second guy is A.J. Dillon. So I know A.J. Dillon in Green Bay, there's a lot of question marks. Obviously, Javonte leaves. But what we did see from him this year was a huge step. Correct. In 2021, we saw a huge step from him. Jones is always utilized super heavily in the passing game. So when we look at that, he's averaged right around 60, 65 targets, every single year for the last 3 seasons. I anticipate that number jumps up this season. And I want to say his carries have decreased by right around 30 for Aaron Jones. His carries have decreased by 30 every single season over the past 3 years. So put that into with A.J. Dillon's improvement, red zone opportunities. Also, just a fun fact, Aaron Rodgers every single year continues to throw over 100 attempts within the 20-yard line, continues to be in the top 5 in the league. I think this year we kind of see that step back a little bit, and I think A.J. Dillon really benefits from that. So those are my 2 guys. I could see some huge things from both of them. I'm hoping to see some big things from both of them. So those are my 2 guys.
Anyone that's seen A.J. Dillon in shorts agrees with you. Marcus,
Kevin Harris in shorts, though. Just saying.
Marcus, any thoughts on those guys?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Elijah Mitchell's going to be fine. I think what we saw to him last year, it's funny too, because after the draft, everybody's like, oh, well, how does Trey Sermon fit in? And like, the answer is he doesn't. Like it took literally everybody getting hurt for Trey Sermon to get on the field. And even then, the Niners went to Deebo Samuel. So I think Elijah Mitchell's going to be fine. Sort of side note to that, I keep saying to people, I think Tyrion Davis-Price at some point this season is going to become fantasy relevant, just because that seems to be how a Shanahan offense operates. Whether it's, somebody gets hurt, which happens a lot, obviously, for running backs, or they just want to rotate somebody in. But, the guy they drafted late this year, I have a feeling that at some point during the fantasy season, we're going to be talking about him as a waiver wire ad, and people are going to want to pick him up. A.J. Dillon, I think, benefits. And you talked about Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball down near the goal line. I think with no Devontae Adams, I don't know that they throw the ball near the goal line quite as much, which I think if you had Aaron Jones or even A.J. Dillon, had to be super frustrating when it's like, first and goal from the 3 and you see Rodgers drop back to throw that quick slant. Like, hey, it's great if you got Rodgers or Adams. It sucked if you had Aaron Jones. So I think with no Devontae Adams this year, I think you see the Packers maybe line up and run the football a little bit more, which I think Quadzilla is probably going to be the guy that gets a lot of those touches.
Yep. All right, so I just want to take another second to talk about win bets. Make sure you get down on the wins bet $50 win $200 promotion, where you bet $50. A $50 bet qualifies you for up to a $200 in free bets. It's the ultimate fantasy football experience. You bet $500 plus on sports or casino before July 31st, 2022. You get entered to win the ultimate fantasy football draft experience at Encore Beach Club, including a 2-night stay at the Wynn Resorts for you and your entire league. Multiple entries allowed. There's so much to choose from, and all you have to do is download the WynnBet app or visit wynnbet.com to get started. Offer subject to change. Terms and conditions at wynnbet.com. Must be 21 years or older and present in a state where play through WynnBet is available. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. All right, Jeremy, you have 2 guys for us or just one?
One of them is J.K. Dobbins, which Marcus already very much alluded to, is definitely on the cusp of a very big breakout as long as his ACL is good. So we'll swift to another Swift with DeAndre Swift. I really think DeAndre Swift, you can argue it's not really a breakout, but he's never finished higher than PPR running back 16, large part due to injury. We obviously know he's super talented. But last year, he did kind of see a little bit of a drop in efficiency in the red zone. He did only see 11 carries last year inside the red zone, aside from 17 his rookie season. But a lot of that was the Lions offense that was just not very good. So I think that this year we're going to see everything that we hoped for from DeAndre Swift. I mean, obviously, we're going to have to go with fingers crossed that he does stay healthy because he is not really played a lot. He's played a majority of the games in both seasons, but not the full season. But if you get a full season, I think we're going to get what we've wanted out of DeAndre Swift, which is a top 5 finish. Just the PPR upside with all the receptions, the passing game work. And I think, honestly, it's going to be worrisome for the rest of that offense. I worry about like St. Brown. I worry about TJ Hawkinson, because if Swift is healthy, he's their guy. He's just so dynamic. He had a 51.2 elusive rating from FTN last season, which is pretty good. I mean, he wasn't top. There was like Godwin Ingham. I don't know exactly if that's how you spell his name, was higher, but obviously didn't play as much time. So for me, I'm just in completely on DeAndre Swift. I know it's not really a breakout per se, but I do think he finally gets that top 5 finish that we've been clamoring for years here.
Yeah, he's a pretty polarizing figure. If you I throw some price check threads out there on Twitter, and there's people that are like, yeah, absolutely, Swift is a top 5, top 10 guy in Dynasty, and there's other people that are like, no, like he's never done anything. Show me. And so those, you get all different sides of the coin with Swift. But I agree, and I love seeing the fact that he not only was a fantasy star with the passing game the first half of the season, but they went away from the passing game the second half, and he was just fine. He's a great runner.
He's a very good runner. I think it's underrated just because of how good he is in the passing game. And the Lions aren't really that bad. I know everybody wants to give him like a downside, but I mean, that offensive line's starting to shape up. We've seen Jared Goff now. Yeah, it was with Sean McVay, but like we've seen Jared Goff like do well and create a lot of fantasy production. I mean, you've got St. Brown there. You got DJ Chark, who's going to be able to stretch that field. Josh Reynolds is there. I mean, Hawkinson's there. There's a lot of talent there, and I know that also means there's more mouths to feed, but it's going to open up that field for DeAndre Swift. And if he stays healthy, I really do think that we finally get that. And I think he's proven it. I know people are saying, show me, but I mean, he has. It's just he hasn't been able to stay healthy, unfortunately. And a lot of his injuries are just freak injuries. I mean, I think the one I saw was, you remember he fell on this. He got what was Roquan Smith that fell on top of him on the sidelines. I mean, 300-pound linebacker falling on you. I mean, yeah, that's going to hurt. So I just, it's tough. It's been bad luck for him, and ultimately health does affect your fantasy production on a season-long basis. But I just hope that we get that whole season from him, because I think it's just going to be great.
Marcus, your thoughts?
So I will say this. I was way wrong about DeAndre Swift last year. I was worried about him coming into the season. And the reason he ended up being great was the exact reason I was worried about him. I was like, well, the Lions are going to be behind. How much is he going to be involved in the passing game? And he got way more targets than I ever anticipated. So, knowing that, I think he is going to be a breakout guy this year. And like you said, I mean, the key is he's got to stay healthy for a majority of the season, but I would say Jamal Williams was much less of a factor last year than I thought he was going to be. I think that has something to do with it. The only question I really have is what happens when Jamison Williams finally shows up, whenever that's going to be, right? They went out and they added DJ Chark. They've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, who, by the way, I know he's a polarizing figure on fantasy Twitter. I love him, not just because I'm a USC homer. I think he's actually going to be good with Jared Goff. Hawkinson obviously going to get a lot of targets too. So I think once they get all their pass catchers sort of lined up, what happens to Swift? But I think he's too much a part of the offense for them to completely go away from him. So I'm on board with that.
Yeah, and fun fact, Warren Sharp posted this week. The Detroit Lions are the most expensive offense in the NFL. $123 million. Yeah, Pat McAfee did kind of a countdown, and it was very good, foreshadowing.
Inflation sucks, huh?
And it was like, is it the Chiefs? No. Is it the Packers? No. And I'm on edge. Like, who the hell is it? It's not the Cowboys. Then who is it? Well, it was the Lions.
Did they break it down where the salary is?
Yeah.
Is Goff still on his Rams salary? Is that
probably?
Yeah, I think he's still like a $30 million.
They got a pretty expensive offensive line as well. They got a lot of resources in that offensive line. But shout out to Detroit social media. Some of my favorite videos from the offseason stuff are from Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell and Antoine Randall L. There's just some really great videos you guys got to check out. So I'm going to go into mine. And this one, I kind of double dipped because we're going to talk about rookies here in a little bit. but nobody picked Breece Hall. And so I wanted to make sure I can talk about Breece Hall. Every year for the last 6 years, there's been at least 1.5 running backs in the top 12. So if you're going to get any running back to finish as an RB1, Breece Hall's got to be, he's got to be one of the top candidates for that. And I know Michael Carter is there, and I like Michael Carter, but Breece Hall is a different dude. And I think Breece Hall has a very, very strong chance to finish as an RB1. Even in a split backfield, he does not have to get 300, carries and all the Jonathan Taylor work. If you can get 240 carries, that's about 14, 240 touches, that's about 14 touches a game. That kind of is your mark for those guys that can consistently get up there in the top 12. It's a bad defense. So we are going to see if he is involved in the passing game. And that is probably my only concern, because Jets expect the Jets to be in negative game scripts, but he is a very good pass catcher. He's not just a good rusher. And he had a lot of production in the passing game. And my other one, we're going to get 3 out of Jeremy's 4 pictures back there. It is Javonte Williams. I know they signed Melvin Gordon, and that's really helped Javonte Williams' ADP, because his ADP was just crazy. And especially in Dynasty, he was going as like the RB2. So it's put a blanket on that, and now he's a little bit affordable. You're not going to get Najee Harris last year kind of a workload. And if you're expecting that, you should probably, calm down. But this is going to be a very good offense. We got Russell Wilson, Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy's healthy. I mean, this is a good offense. And they had a lot of goal line touches last year. Javonte Williams only had 30 goal line touches last year. He had less rushing attempts than Melvin Gordon. Expect him to take the 1A instead of the 1B in that backfield. And Javonte Williams can, easily. He looked special last year when he got the touches. Expect him to take a big step up this year. Marcus, thoughts on Javonte, Breece Hall?
Love Javonte. Was less excited when Melvin Gordon returned.
Yeah.
I think what we see this year is very similar to what we see last year. Javonte was RB 17. I think he bumps up to, he gets in the top 15. Maybe he knocks on the door of the top 12. But I just think that having Melvin Gordon there kind of puts a cap on what his ceiling can be. But I do appreciate that there's been a corresponding ADP dip because, I think the hype was such that before Gordon came back, we would have been talking about Javonte as a mid-first round guy, I think, in a lot of drafts. That obviously changed because he's going to be splitting time. And I would think, best case scenario, it's like a 60-40 split in favor of Javonte, but I think they're gonna divvy it out pretty evenly there. But I love him overall, and whenever Melvin Gordon moves on, hopefully after this year, then it's definitely to the moon. Breece Hall, I think, is gonna be fine. And it's funny, we ended up talking about the 2 Carolina running backs, right? Because Javonte and Michael Carter ended up sharing time at North Carolina. Now you got Michael Carter and Breece Hall sharing time there in New York. I do think Breece Hall is going to be the leader there. This is another year I stop and I sigh. This is another year where I look at the Jets and I'm like, I'm weirdly intrigued by this. And, I did this last year and it was not great. And now I look at it again and I'm like, I'm weirdly intrigued by this. And, who knows? Maybe I go out and I get Breece Hall somewhere, or I draft Garrett Wilson somewhere. I think there are interesting pieces. And what I love about them is that you don't really have to pay a huge price to get any of those guys. And I think that, to me, is what it would be different if I was sort of intrigued by the Jets, but I'd have to spend a lot of draft capital to get them. I'm intrigued by the Jets, and I can do it for a fairly good value. So that, to me, is what gives me the thumbs up on those guys.
So earlier in the show, before we got on, we talked a little bit about Baker Mayfield. So I didn't mention it earlier, but just wanted to get your thoughts, Marcus, on the Baker Mayfield trade and how that affects some dynasty pieces, mainly DJ Moore.
I think DJ Moore is the guy who, I guess he benefits from it, but I don't even really know how much. I guess the question you have to ask and answer for yourself is, how much of an upgrade over Sam Darnold do you think Baker Mayfield is? And I think he's an upgrade, I don't think he's a significant upgrade from Sam Darnold. I think he is, as the kids would say, he's mid, right? Like he's like as a good friend of mine, like Baker Mayfield falls in the category of oatmeal, as a friend and I would say, right? Like oatmeal is fine. It's fine, right? It will do the job. It will fill you up. It's healthy. It will get you through the day. When you go out to breakfast with friends and family, you're not ordering oatmeal. It's not exciting, right? And that's Baker Mayfield. He's kind of oatmeal. And so, DJ Moore's been a guy who's kind of been hanging around the top 15 of fantasy wide receivers. I don't think that changes dramatically. I mean, look, for as much as we like to dump on Sam Darnold and he's an easy punching bag, right? Like there were moments where you're like, oh, I sort of get it. I understand why this guy was drafted where he was. Now he had too many of the what the hell are you doing out there moments. But again, like Baker, we saw a lot of that with him. Let's also throw in the fact that Ben McAdoo is the offensive coordinator, which I don't know how that excites a whole lot of people. So, DJ Moore gets maybe a small bump, but I don't see it being significant. I also wonder, you talk dynasty, what is the future of Baker Mayfield in Carolina? Is this a stopgap? Do they believe they can rehabilitate him? Because they've sold us that same story with Sam Darnold. Like they keep telling us how much they love Sam Darnold. And every time I hear that, I'm like, are you trying to convince us or you? Like, who are you talking to right now? And I just wonder, is it going to be that way with Baker Mayfield, where they see a guy who's broken and somebody in a relationship, like I can fix him. I can make him better. And I'm not sure that Baker is much better than what we've seen from him so far.
Well, and they paid significantly more for Sam Darnold than they did for Baker Mayfield. And
they also they picked up his extension like immediately. Immediately. And it was like, look, man, again, I'm a USC homer, and I was kind of like, really? I don't know about that. So
the question is does Baker get DJ over 4 touchdowns this season? That's the question. Anything over that is a win.
I'm going to say yes. I'm going to go out. I'm going to say that, yes, he scores more than 4 touchdowns this year.
Okay.
Yeah. I was actually listening to a CBS podcast this week. They were talking about the passing offense in the Baker Mayfield trade. The Panthers only had 14 passing touchdowns last year, which I knew their passing offense was bad, but like when I heard 14, I was like, holy cow, I did not know it was that bad. And like, you got to think Baker at least goes over 20, right? And DJ Moore actually had a 25% target in the green zone, which was where the red zone and touch in the end zone comes into play. And so I think I agree, Marcus.
Well, if we don't see a touchdown by week 4, Odell Beckham Jr.'s father and DJ Moore's father might be putting out a mixtape and getting DJ Moore out of town.
DJ Moore's going to start learning, like Final Cut Pro and stuff.
So Marcus, let's talk about the running backs. Again, I talked about it. Usually, there's at least one running back that ends up in the top 12. Who do you think is an instant impact rookie this year?
I don't know if he's instant impact necessarily, but like I was going to go Breece Hall. I was going to go some of these guys at the top of the draft, that I think are going to be in good spots. But the guy that I keep coming back to that I think is going to have a sneaky good year is Damien Pierce. And mostly because who is there in Houston to run the football? I mean, any of you guys could probably show up in Houston and maybe work your way into a few carries here and there just because it's wide open right now. So I think, if you are the Texans and you are still a ways away from really, truly being competitive, why wouldn't you at some point, maybe not week 1 or week 2, but at some point early in the season, look at your rookie Damien Pierce and be like, hey, look, what do you have? What can you do? Can we build around you? Because they already have seemed to they seem to really sort of be building around Davis Mills. And side note, I will make the case that Davis Mills might have been the best rookie quarterback last year.
Agreed.
I know statistically, I think it was Mac Jones, but Davis Mills, with what he had to work with and what he was thrown into, might have been the best rookie quarterback last year. They're building around him. They've got Damien Pierce in the backfield. Everything else is really wide open there. So I have this feeling that we're going to see him just sort of pick up numbers based on volume more than anything else. So while I get it, I understand the Brees Halls, I understand the Kenneth Walkers, I understand all those guys. I just think that maybe we should give Damien Pierce a little bit more love, just because he is in maybe a better situation than just about anybody, at least in terms of opportunity. I won't say wins and losses, because the Texans are going to stink, but in terms of just opportunity and potential, Pierce might have a better shot than anybody.
Anybody, anything else on Pierce? All right, Justin, who do you got?
Yeah, so this is where I brought in my homer pick, and that's Isaiah Spiller from the Los Angeles Chargers. I mean, so I think I have really enjoyed the Chargers process over the last couple of years, not the results, the process when it comes to the running back position. Obviously, we've got Austin Ekeler there in the backfield, but they've thrown some resources in there because you need to spell him from time to time. He does get banged up. Joshua Kelly's not it. That was not a great pick. I was hoping that he maybe turned into something that they need to kind of jump ship and just get off of that one. Roundtree has some ability, but I think he's a 6th-round pick for a reason. He's kind of a special teams guy. So they bring in Isaiah Spiller, who I thought was potentially more of a 3rd-round pick than a 4th-round pick, and they were able to get him there. The Chargers had 423 rush attempts last year. This is an offense that moves at the top 5 pace in the NFL. Austin Ekeler has come out on record and said that he kind of wants to be in the low 200s when you're talking about carries. So you're talking about potentially 200 carries that could be split out over 3 other guys. So that's Joshua Kelly, Larry Roundtree, or Isaiah Spiller. I think Isaiah Spiller is going to come out of that pack, and he's going to look really good. And knock on wood, I never want to see Austin Ekeler step off the field, but he does have some things that could crop up with a nagging injury or two. Isaiah Spiller could be a bell cow for the Chargers in a really high-powered offense. So he's the guy that I'm kind of thinking could be a breakout and should be on rosters for sure this coming fall.
Marcus, thoughts on Isaiah Spiller?
Yeah, I mean, I just think he's one of those guys where, especially if you're drafting, if you're late in your draft, you always want to try to get guys who, if things break right or break poorly, depending on how you look at it, that they are, let's just say they are one play away from a big opportunity. And Isaiah Spiller is certainly in that spot. Like you mentioned, Austin Ekeler is going to do most of the work there, but if something were to happen and he can't fulfill his duties in that backfield, Spiller steps right into it. I mean, and I think it's a better situation than was it last year, 2 years ago, when Josh Kelly came in and Josh Kelly had that big week, like early on, like week one, week 2, right? Like he had a really big game. And we're like, here comes Josh Kelly. And now I sit here and I have to like scratch my head and remember, like, is that his name again? Like that's kind of where it's gone. But I think Isaiah Spiller is kind of a different dude than that. So I think he'll get some consistent work. But if something were to happen to Austin Ekeler, then the floodgates open, and there's a lot of chances for him to be productive.
Yeah, and I like Lombardi over there. We saw what he did with Mike Williams and implementing that same style of offense. And I just picture Spiller as the Ingram to Eckler's Kamara. And maybe I'm just being hopeful, but I'm all over Spiller. And before we go to you, Ralph, just one more. We're going to talk about Sleeper real quick. We don't want to forget our partners over at Sleeper. It's the fastest growing fantasy platform today with millions of players. Probably have already played for your fantasy league on Sleeper. I use it myself. It's a game-changing product unlike anything else in the industry. Now you can make money on Sleeper too. By playing the new over-under game, it's super simple. First, in any sport, choose 2 or more players that you like. Pick an over-under, for example, number of points in basketball or hits in baseball. Then choose the amount of money you want to enter into the contest. If you pick correctly, you can win anywhere from 2 times to over 20 times the money amount. The main reason I'm excited about Over Under on Sleeper is that it's the only app where I can join my buddies' contests and play together. It's got a built-in group chat where I can see and copy my friends' picks and tap on the button. It's insanely fun to write it out together. Stop what you're doing and download the Sleeper app now to play the new Over Under game. Have fun with your friends, make some money. On your mobile phone, you can use this. You join our listener group on Sleeper at sleeper.com/SGP, and Sleeper will automatically match your first deposit up to $100. The right to join our squad and get a 100% deposit match at sleeper.com/SGP. All right, Ralph, what do you got for us?
I got the boring pick, but the one that I actually really enjoy and I'm looking forward to it. But Kenneth Walker in Seattle, I think, is really intriguing to me. I think with Russ gone, we don't really know what to expect out in Seattle. And I think part of that with that mystery also comes, Kenneth Walker. And we know Rashaad Penny can be effective when he's on that field. That when is a very big question mark. And so I think Kenneth Walker will have that opportunity right off the bat, very similar to what we were talking about with Javonte and Melvin, to kind of be that 1A, 1B duo there in Seattle. And I also think it was such a slap in the face to Russ that they went out and got Charles Cross, with their top 10 pick in that O-line. And I think they're focusing on the right pieces there. And so I think Kenneth Walker will have the opportunity. And, my bold prediction is that he comes out and gets 20 receptions this year, due to what people think that he can and can't catch the ball. But I think Kenneth Walker has a good opportunity this year. And I think it'll obviously depend on Penny, but as long as Penny's healthy, I see that 1A, 1B. Penny goes down, Kenneth Walker is going to be the man there. And I mean, best of luck to Chris Carson. I hope he's recovering well, but reports are that it doesn't look like he'll probably play another down in the NFL. And I hope he does really take care of himself. And I mean, with that, it really only leaves Penny and Walker. So I'm excited to see how that backfield unfolds.
Yeah. And in the future, I mean, with Geno Smith and Drew Lock, maybe they're tanking for Stroud, or whatever you want to say, second for Stroud. It could be a really good offense next year. Yeah. So even if he doesn't have the best season this year, it could be an improving offense. Marcus, what are your thoughts about Ken Walker?
I like him. I mean, I think he's another guy who's in a good spot because as much as Pete Carroll wants to talk about sort of, progressing and doing new things, like when it comes down to crunch time, he's still going to run on, hashtag establish the run. He's going to sit there on the sideline. He's going to chew his gum like a maniac. He's going to run the ball on first down and second down. And then on third down, he's going to be like, hey, Geno Smith, come save us. I said Geno Smith because I don't think Drew Lock's going to get it. Anyway, Drew Lock got ethered but he caught a stray from the U.S. Open tennis account, right? Like that just doesn't bode well for him being the starter in Seattle. But I think that even with Rashaad Penny there, I think Kenneth Walker is going to get a pretty decent workload. But like you mentioned, I mean, the whole story of his career has been missing games because of injury. And while what he did at the end of last year was amazing, it's hard to completely ignore all the other years that we have in our back pocket about him. So I think Walker's another guy who, sort of like Damien Pierce is, or even Isaiah Spiller, is in a good situation to end up with a bigger workload than maybe we're anticipating, just because there's a good chance that at some point during the year, he's going to end up as a starter or something close to it.
Yeah, someone was asking about, Rashaad Penny, and it's like, you look at it, the guy said it's like 600 yards in 4 years, and about 400 of them came in the last 6 games of last year. So it's really hard to be super excited about him. Jeremy, who do you got for us?
All right, so I'm going to make Justin, maybe Marcus, mad, but I do live in Buffalo, and I agree with Marcus. I don't think the Bills like Devin Singletary as much as we do. They've tried to replace him with Zach Moss, or at least supplement him. And then this year they decided to do that with James Cook as well in the second round. Both aren't very big guys, so I can't say that one's going to steal more of a goal line role or not. But Devin Singletary hasn't been overly great on the goal line. We've seen, like Marcus had alluded to, we've seen Josh Allen, we've seen Matt Breida, we've seen Zach Moss, we've seen Frank Gore, all these guys try along the goal line. So I think that ultimately James Cook is going to be more than just a receiving back that everything's alluded to at the moment. I do think that James Cook will have the ability to work into a larger role. He has produced 2,000 total scrimmage yards over at University of Georgia, along with 20 touchdowns. Now, is he going to primarily be a running back or a pass catching back? Yes, I do believe so. But I think that you could see some work in the run game. I mean, Zach Moss and also Matt Breida saw almost over 115 carries last year on top of what Devin Singletary also did. So it's not just a one-man show there in Buffalo. So I think that even with 100 carries, and you see there's even open up over 100 targets from Cole Beasley and as well Emmanuel Sanders moving on. And all they brought in was Jamison Crowder. And I like Jamison Crowder, another guy, though, that has injury issues. So for me, I think that Cook can be used in the slot. I think his versatility is going to be the key to him, like, getting a lot of work. And ultimately, he is an injury away. Maybe Devin Singletary starts to kind of slack off a little bit. He doesn't really produce a ton. You could see you could see a more explosive Cook step in and then take over a little bit more for the Bills on an explosive offense that I think there's going to be a lot of upside for him, especially if the Bills do steer away from Josh Allen, like Justin had alluded to in the run game, especially in the red zone. I just think there's a lot of potency to this offense that we don't know what it's going to look like under Ken Dorsey. So it's going to be similar, I believe. I think there's still going to be a lot of passing, but if that's the case, it's even better for Cook because he is supposedly a receiving back. So I just think that there's a lot here for James Cook. I know that a lot of people, I feel like he's very polarizing at the moment because a lot of people, you either love him or you hate him, especially at his ADP. I just think that there's a lot of upside built into James Cook. I know that it's maybe not what Breece Hall can bring you. It might not be what Isaiah Spiller brings you if he's fully healthy because he is going to split touches, but I still think I'm in on him. I think that he's going to be worth it. And in the long run, I think that he could possibly finish as a top 20 back this season.
So Gabriel Davis isn't going to get all of those touches that Dynasty Twitter wants him to get?
I love Gabe Davis. He's great. I understand. And for what he almost did for Buffalo, I will always love him. But I don't believe that he's going to get
underrated TikTok account. Underrated TikTok account, Gabe Davis. Go check it out. And back to the U.S. Open. I don't know if you saw it, but DK Metcalf actually stepped in, and the U.S. intern.
Basically like, that's enough.
yeah. The intern said, after reviewing your draft photo, I changed my mind and apologized.
Basically, it was like DK Metcalf was watching his teammate get beat up in an alley and was like, hey, that's enough.
He took his shirt off and he was like, stop it.
Right. And everybody's like, okay, we're cool.
Yeah. So Marcus, thoughts on James Cook?
Well, I say at the ADP, I would do that all day because the risk is very minimal. I think at least early on, I think it's going to be a battle between he and Zach Moss to see who's going to be behind Devin Singletary. Now, as the year goes on, I'm curious what his role is going to be. I will sit here and say, I know that people are planting the flag one way or another for James Cook. I'm going to just sit here and say, I truly don't know. But again, with where the ADP is, it's nearly risk-free. So why not? Why not throw a couple of darts at it? And if it turns into something, great. If not, you really haven't lost out on much of anything. So I think that's sort of my official position on James Cook. And I would say you didn't make me mad. You just hurt my heart, reminding me that the Bills don't necessarily love Devin Singletary the way I do.
I love Devin Singletary a lot, and I'm a Bills fan. I don't know. I just feel like they don't love him.
Everything they do suggests that they don't love him the same kind of way. Like at some point we got to take the hint from the teams, right?
Yeah, well, go check out SGPN Fantasy. We put out a tweet earlier today, and in this, we asked 6th round running backs, and ironically, Elijah Mitchell, AJ Dillon, James Cook, and then Clyde Edwards-Helaire were there. So the question is, which one would you take in the Dynasty League? So make sure you guys go check that out and answer. Mine is Rashaad White. So Tampa Bay running back out of Arizona State. This was an offense that threw the ball a lot. 731 passing attempts last year. It's a top offense. The running back position got 138 targets. 84 went to Leonard Fournette, and 29 went to Gio Bernard. 13 went to Burkhan's Ronald Jones, and the tight end position also received quite a bit. 89 went to Gronk, 57 to Brait, 21 to O.J. Howard. And the tight ends are still going to get theirs. But if we don't see Brait get a significant increase, those targets typically correlate to the running back position. And Rashaad White profiles as a great receiving back. He had over 10.6 yards per catch last year. And he had over 450 yards receiving. He's someone that, some people want to compare him to early shades of David Johnson. I don't know about all that, but he is not only a good running back, but he is a great receiving back. And I like what he profiles out there. It's 16 touchdowns last year. So not only did he get a bunch of yards, but he still got in the end zone there in Arizona State. Marcus, what are your thoughts on Rashaad White?
So, I think he, I think his value, I think where he makes an impact is probably as a pass catcher, which is sort of weird because Leonard Fournette has become the pass catching back that nobody thought. Like,
Yeah.
I wonder if the Jaguars front office looks at it and they're like, who is this guy? Like, this isn't the same guy that we drafted, right? Like, it can't be. But with Ronald Jones gone, I think White kind of slides into there, and he can be an effective pass catcher early on. And everything the Bucs have done in the past sort of suggests that they don't really want to have to lean on Fournette as a bell cow. I think they did, in part because Bruce Arians just didn't like Ronald Jones for whatever reason. I don't know if Rodeo kicked his dog or what the hell happened, but they just didn't get along. Presumably Rashaad White's going to get along better with his coaching staff than Rojo did with his coaching staff. So I think that's sort of the big plus right there. And it's an offense that projects to be pretty good again this year. Like, yes, I know Gronk's not back. Which, by the way, I don't know that Cameron Brate yet, right? I guess I should throw that in. I don't know that Cameron Brate like snaps up all those targets. I think it's going to be some sort of combination of guys. I know I've seen a lot of people talking about Cade Otton. We'll see, but I think. I mean, look, I know that we've seen some rookie tight ends kind of be decent. Obviously Kyle Pitts had a really good year last year. We've seen some other Pat Freiermuth had a pretty good year last year. But I mean, on the whole, let's just keep it a buck, right? Rookie tight ends generally don't give us a whole lot. You can cherry pick a few examples here and there, but by and large, there's just not much there. So I feel like whoever replaces Gronk's production, it's going to be sort of a team effort where, maybe a little bit goes to Mike Evans, maybe a little bit goes to Brate, maybe a little bit does go to Otton, maybe some of it goes to Russell Gage, maybe some of it goes to Rashaad White. So maybe that's the opportunity there for him to step in and get those opportunities. But again, if you're talking redraft, I think even if you're talking dynasty, I think the price is sort of right, but you're not giving up a ton and you're hoping for that upside to hit. And if it doesn't, all right, well, you're not really out a whole lot.
Yeah, he's a early second round rookie pick, like 201. I think I picked him up like 201, 203 in most of my drafts. And yeah, Dynasty Twitter is a very emotional group. They're a very reactive group. And they are always very hopeful. I think that they answer every Twitter poll based on their roster and not with their head. It's a very emotional group, and everyone is trying to thrust Cade Otton into this spotlight.
Explain this to me, right? It feels to me like Dynasty Twitter is always preparing for a season that never comes, right? Like they're always building rosters for a season that never arrives. I mean, to me, the peak of it was someone suggesting that, hey, maybe you consider selling Jonathan Taylor. I'm like, wait, what are we doing here? He had one great year, and we're talking about maybe thinking about what are we doing? At some point, I get it. Everybody wants to try to be ahead of the curve. It just feels like they're out there. I guess it's true, right? Because tomorrow never shows up, right? When tomorrow gets here, it's today. And I feel like that is sort of the mantra of Dynasty Twitter.
Yeah, there's a lot of people out there that, I tell everybody as far as advice, if you put a poll out there, just understand the youth is going to win the poll every single time. Every time. Because that's not their roster. But when it comes down to it, and you look at their actual teams, they're drafting Leonard Fournette and James Conner. Don't buy this BS that they're taking Rashaad White and Damien Pierce over those guys because they want to win now. And, of course, you got those other guys that do. And your roster looks young and beautiful. And you're going to have great draft picks next year because you're going to stink.
That's exactly what's happening right now to Zeke, right? I mean, we're seeing Zeke drafted at RB 18 when he hasn't had a season under an RB 10.
The Zeke slander has gone way too far. It's gone
way too far.
I agree 100%.
Too far.
It's gone too far now.
But I'm loving it because I'm picking it up everywhere. I would pick it up everywhere. I mean, he was bad last year, and he was he finished 8. RB8.
Exactly.
He's bad. He's hurt.
He is that he just plays. He always plays games. I don't know. Don't quote me, but I probably has the most games since entering the NFL.
Yeah, he's not
the running back position. He doesn't miss a ton of games. So yeah, he's not explosive and he's not the fancy toy, but he's there. And Taylor scores a lot of touchdowns. And he just scores touchdowns.
I also just feel like Tony Pollard to me is like, you see guys that are really great in smaller doses and all of a sudden they get a bigger workload and they're just not as efficient. And look, I could be totally wrong. Maybe Tony Pollard really is that dude, but the way fantasy Twitter talks about him, it's like, let's
Barry Sanders is on the bench.
Right. It's like, hey, remember that time Zeke jumped in the Salvation Army pot? Let's just leave him there and put Tony Pollard in. Like, that's the whole, like, the attitude. And I'm like, what if Tony Pollard really is only good with like 8 to 12 touches a game? Like, what happens if he gets 15 touches a game and then falls apart? Like, where's your God now at that point? So I don't know.
Yeah. Every fantasy analyst thinks they're smarter than the NFL head coaches and how they use their players. Yeah, well, I just want to say thanks, Marcus. You've been very gracious with your time. I really appreciate it. Is there anything you're working on or anything that everyone needs to go check out?
Just check out our podcast. If you don't know, I work for this small mom and pop organization called the National Football League, and we do a podcast right now once a week, myself and Michael F. Florio. So you can find that, any of the normal places, Stitcher, iTunes, Spotify, all that kind of stuff. So check us out there. I'm sort of kind of mildly hibernating right now, and then we crank it up for real. In fact, I think NFL Fantasy Live, we're doing preseason shows starting in mid-August, I believe. Don't quote me on this. I believe August 15th is our first preseason show. So you can check that out on NFL Network, and then before you know it, the season will be here, and I'll be on your television 5 days a week, whether you want me to or not. So.
Yeah, looking forward to it. I actually have Michael coming on the show next week. We're going to do the same thing, but we're going to do it with receivers. So everybody, thank you for tuning in, and good luck this season.